Great. Thank you very much. It's good. It's nice to see everybody here today. Not too many Dharma School kids today, but I'm assuming they're on Zoom here. So it's nice to see everybody today, and to be able to do the chanting together and just have everyone here together within the Hondo is just such a nice feeling. I actually got nervous. I still am that way. I am very happy to feel this way. So as we approach the spring season, my son right now is in spring break, and the flowers are starting to come out now. In Japan, the sakura season is in full swing, and so I'm very happy during this time. I don't know if you know where. Tokyo in Kichijoji, I remember the park in Kichijoji Park, and also Ueno Koen, Ueno Park is also very famous for their sakura trees. And also around here too, in the Union City area, there's a lot of people, I guess, perhaps it was because a lot of the people had, Japanese families had nurseries here, the Hiramine family right here today, the sakura, there's a lot of sakura trees here. And so I know at Tom Kitayama Elementary, there's a lot of sakura trees there. So it's very nice to see that. So it's a very kind of lively kind of time right now. So in the midst of this background of this lively time, I don't mean to be a Debbie the Downer, but I would like to talk about something that happened in this past weekend, right? Something very kind of sugoi happened in the news in the past weekend, and this was the whole incident that happened at the Oscars, you know? So I kind of wanted to talk about this a little bit and put in my 2 cents here. I know that everybody and their mothers have kind of chimed in on this issue, but I want to speak a little bit about this incident about, Will. Does everybody know this story? Great. If you don't, it's like you're living under a rock. It's all over the news, everywhere, on YouTube. Every other video is this. But it's about the actor Will Smith, who slaps Chris Rock on live television. And so it's a very kind of how shall I say, kind of gasping type of moment, right? And everybody is kind of shocked in from this. And I'd like to kind of talk about this from a kind of Buddhist perspective today. So just to give you a little bit of a background, these two, Will Smith and Chris Rock, are kind of like my heroes, right? I grew up watching these people. Will Smith had that whole sitcom, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then I watched him move over to the big screen, with Independence Day, and so we were very happy, or I was very happy, of Will Smith, and then there's Chris Rock, who's a very funny, very smart, very witty comedian. I remember his one joke about, he said that, this country loves guns so much, right? But what we should do is, everybody who has guns, just let them have their guns, right? But what we should do is charge $3,000 per bullet, right? And that'll solve this issue of the gun problem in America. And so he has, just comments like that are very witty. And I grew up watching him, and I really enjoyed his entertainment. So to see this kind of situation happen is very unfortunate, right? And it kind of left a real bad taste in my mouth. And I don't know why. I have no care for the entertainment business or celebrity gossip or any of these things. But for some reason, I find myself watching wanting to know what's going on with this situation. And I don't know why that's the case, but I guess, I'm very interested of what is happening. And so what is the Buddhist kind of take on this situation? Or what is one possible Buddhist interpretation of this situation? And I'd like to talk about that a little bit today. I think the first and foremost one is the Buddhist principle of Ahimsa. Do you guys know what Ahimsa is? Have you ever heard of Ahimsa? It's a Sanskrit term for non-violence, okay? So it's もう当たり前なことなんですけどね. It's a very like no-brainer. It goes without saying, but I think it just needs to be reiterated that the Buddhist principle of non-violence, ahimsa, is very important, right? And using violence means that we have given up on finding a peaceful solution, I think. I don't know if you know who Honen Shonin is, but our founder of our school, Jodo Shinshu, is Shinran Shonin, right? Here on the very immediate right of the Amida Buddha. And his teacher, Honen Shonin, is actually on the very left scroll, okay? He's on the very bottom, okay? But Honen Shonin is the teacher of Shinran Shonin. And when Honen Shonin was a little boy, his father was murdered by another samurai person, okay? And assassinated, essentially. And Honen Shonin witnesses this assassination taking place, his father being murdered. And so when he's, at his kind of last moments, the father tells Honen, don't avenge my death, okay? Don't avenge my death. Seek the Buddhist path, right? And so he says, don't avenge my death, because if you avenge my death, then the person that you killed's son will come after you, right? And then your son will go after that person, and the cycle will continue and continue, and the cycle of violence will continue on forever. And so the only thing that stops this cycle of violence is compassion, okay, or is love, what we call compassion in Buddhism. And this is a universal truth, as the Buddha Shakyamuni points out to us, okay? So compassion is the only thing that stops this cycle of violence, okay? So Chris Rock, another point that I want to make is that he did not escalate the situation by getting in a physical altercation with Will Smith, right? If he had done that, can you imagine if Chris Rock fought back, right, or with physical violence, right? The entire night, I think, would have been ruined, right? I think they wouldn't have been able to continue on the show. They would not have been able to recover. But because he did not fight back, he was able to somehow turn it around and continue on with the night, right? And so, if he had not done that, all of the people getting the awards would not have been able to get their awards, right, and be recognized for their accomplishments. It was because of what Chris Rock did not do that saved the show, right? And his professionalism, I think, allowed him to roll with the punch and move on, right? How many people do you know can do this? I don't think I could do this. I think I would either run away or I would come back and try to fight or do something, I don't know. But I don't think I would have been able to do this. So I think Chris Rock's response is an appropriate response in the eyes of Buddhism. I think he took into account everyone else at the show, which is what Buddhism kind of teaches us to do, right? It is that this idea that cooler heads prevail, which is what happened. So, I'm not saying necessarily that, everything that Chris Rock did was correct, but his response from a Buddhist perspective is something that would reflect Buddhist values, I believe. Especially the part about not physically fighting back, right, in the interest of looking out for the other people in that room, right? So I heard that he even apologized to his colleagues, for example, this one other person, Wanda Sykes, right? He apologized to her because he said, I'm sorry that you guys put in all this work in getting this show together and that you hosted this show, but I ruined it, right? And so she said, why are you apologizing to me, right? But I think that that's a very Buddhist kind of mentality to think about, to look in places where other people are not looking. I think this is a very kind of Buddhist way of looking at things, okay? So I really hate that I'm acting like, I'm my opinion matters, or that I talk as if I know these people firsthand. I don't, and my opinion does not matter, right? But I'm just kind of giving you one kind of possible outlook on Buddhism and what it's saying about this issue. The other thing that we as Buddhists do not do is say that the Buddha prompted us to act in such and such a way, okay? The Buddha does not make us do anything, okay? We are responsible for our own actions. And this comes from the principle of karma, okay, from karma. There is free will in karma, and we have to make the decision of all of our actions for ourselves. That might sound like a really cool thing, right, to say, and it might sound like I'm chotto kakko tsuketeru, and like say something nice, oh yeah, we're responsible for our own actions, right? But in fact, I say this with great hesitation, because what I'm saying is actually pretty strict. The principle of karma is very cutthroat in a way, right? You cannot talk your way out of karma. If something happens, it happened because of the previous causes and conditions, right? The principle of causality is a Buddhist principle. So you can't wish it to change. You can't pray for it to change, right? What happens, happens, right? And this is karma, okay? And so what Buddhism teaches us is that we should be careful of our actions. We are responsible for our actions 100%. We cannot blame our actions on other people or on some deity, saying that some deity told me to do this, okay? We do not say those things in Buddhism. The Buddha does not tell us to do something, okay? I'm reminded of, I saw Spider-Man with my son the other day, and there's that famous saying in Spider-Man where the Ji-chan dies, or I don't know if it's the Ji-chan or it's the uncle or someone, right? And he says, with great power comes great responsibility, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And I think Buddhism is 100% in agreement with this statement, right? But it's not that each superhero has their own power. Every person has the power, right? Your actions have power. Your speech have power. Your thoughts has power, okay? And that's why we have to take responsibility for these things. So we have to be mindful of how we interact with others and how we act towards them, okay? I'm often guilty of that, though. I often act out of egocentricity, but this is what Buddhism teaches me not to forget. One last point that I want to say is that it's obvious that Will Smith is undergoing a number of issues that he's dealing with. So this means that when you see him act out, against Chris Rock, that the anger is the result of a chain of events, right, leading up to that. And what we call that chain of events in Buddhism is causes and conditions. The Japanese term is innen, okay, innen. I can recall of a recent problematic political leader of this country who said many heinous things and who did many awful things while in power. But I read somewhere that in his childhood, although he was very financially well off, that he was not loved by his parents, right? He was not cared for, especially his father, who was this business tycoon, real estate tycoon, right? Did not show any affection or kind of attention towards him. And as a result, he grew up to be kind of a person who does not care about other people, a vitriolic person, right? So is it the person who carries out the awful actions, or is it his upbringing, right, that are at fault here? Well, I think the person committing the actions should be held responsible for his or her actions. However, we as the people outside of this person and as Buddhists should not be so quick to judge that person as a bad person or an evil person. Why? Because there's always more to the story than just what we see, right? It's kind of like seeing an iceberg, that's coming out of the water, right? We see a little tiny iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, right? But below the surface of the water, there's this huge, the rest of the body of the iceberg, right? And I think that's the same way when we look at each other. When we look at each other, what we are seeing is the cover of a book, right? But there's so much more layers that we don't see, right? That we're presented with, right? And so that is something that we have to kind of keep in mind, I think, as Buddhists, that when we look at each other, each person has a long history of karmic actions, karmic things that have occurred until this point, right? So we cannot be so quick to judge that person as, you are bad, you are evil, because we simply don't know the full situation, right, of the story. So I'd like to conclude by kind of pointing out the points that I've talked about today. The first one is Ahimsa, okay? No violence, non-violence is a Buddhist principle. The second one is compassion brings the end to suffering, okay? So at maybe some other time we'll talk about whose compassion this is, but for now, it's compassion brings the end to suffering, okay? That's another Buddhist principle. Another one is taking into account the people around you, right? Taking into account the people around you. Another one is the quote from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And this is based on the principle of karma. And then finally, the last one, there's always more to someone than just what is presented to us, so we cannot be quick to judge others. And this is based on the principle of causes and conditions, on the principle of innen, okay? And with that, I would like to close today's Dharma School message. Thank you very much. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo.